Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to cover all the home teams. We'll talk about the Saints, Kellen Moore being announced as the new head coach. We'll get into the Pelicans. Brandon Ingram has been traded. David Griffin met the media earlier this week. Also, again, we'll touch on on basketball with LSU, Tulane, and UNO. We got some really exciting news about Tulane and their practice facility. So a lot to get into over the next hour. Hope you stay tuned for the entire hour. Joining us on our program tonight, two of the best we have in the state. Glenn Guilbeau of Tiger Rag, who is the sports editor there and also fan-sided, and Guerry Smith of Wave Report, NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, and the Advocate. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming down. First of all, I want to let you guys tell us a little bit about what you're involved in. We'll start with Mr. Guilbeau as we pull out the book, Everything Matters in Baseball, the Skip Bertman story. Glenn, tell us first of all about Tiger Rag, fan-sided, and how folks can get this fantastic book, and if there are any book signings coming up.
Yeah, we got two book signings coming up during the regular season, the Mississippi State game and the Arkansas game in April and May. And Skip he had to cancel the New Orleans Quarterback Club, but he signed some books there. We're going to be getting those out. But the two book signings at Alex Box last year really did well. So he's going to be signing for 2 hours straight.
There you go.
That's usually what happens. And Tiger Rag, we've had a series on baseball all week. Got the last installment of that on Friday. And then they open the season Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. And they are loaded. On paper,
right.
They look great, but a lot of transfers, that haven't been in the SEC, but I think they're going to be really good.
Yeah.
I think they'll be in Omaha, and I think they'll win a few games there, and then we'll see. But they are really loaded with left-handed pitchers, left-handed hitters, 8 outfielders that can play. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be something else, I think. And then I'll have a story up on Kellen Moore tomorrow morning from Fan-Sided from his press conference this afternoon, which was interesting.
Yeah, it really was. Also, again, Tiger Rag Radio, right? Part of that as well?
Tiger Rag Radio now with 106.1 The Ticket in New Orleans every Tuesday night. We had Jay Johnson this past Tuesday, and that's a year-round show. We'll be getting ready for spring football shortly in March. But yes, 6 to 8 every Tuesday night throughout the state.
Beautiful. Guerry, welcome back to the show. Always good to have you, my friend. Gary's on with us like Glenn on our radio show. Glenn is usually with us on Friday at 5:35. Gary normally with us on a Thursday at 4:15, but today it'll be 5:15 on the program. Gary, welcome to the show. Tell us about, again, your fantastic website and, of course, how folks can follow you, again, on social media and also catch all your great written work.
And first off, I don't have a book to promote. My mind doesn't work that way. I'll never have a book to promote.
Nor will I.
But good job, Glenn.
Nor will I. Why?
Do one on Spurrier,
I run the Wave Report, the Tulane website, Rivals Tulane website, comprehensive coverage there. Later on today, you'll get. You talked about the practice facility. I went to the community meeting. We'll have every word that was uttered at that community meeting you'll be able to read on that site. And of course, I work for NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune. My paper has about 5 different people who cover LSU. We have me,
right.
who covers Tulane. That's not true. We do have. I don't cover women's basketball at Tulane, but I cover baseball. I cover basketball. I'll be doing double duty on Saturday with a basketball game and a baseball game on Tulane season opening weekend, and also if you. The story I wrote it a couple days ago still hadn't appeared in the paper, but it's online about the practice facility, a full in-depth story with quotes from everybody involved in that.
We'll get to that in our second segment tonight, but looking forward to talking about that. Before we get started, guys, a lot of angst about the Super Bowl coming to New Orleans, where we're going to be ready, 540 projects in 6 months. Those projects were not 100% complete, but by all accounts, New Orleans hit it out the park last week. I mean, again, we did what we do. We do hospitality better than anybody. Of course, again, the walkability of the city, the first-class hotels, 5-star restaurants, mom and pops. I can't say I've never been prouder than this city, but again, it was a tremendous week for the city, and we really showed out and once again proved that, again, if you've got an event, a major event that's going to be in this country, New Orleans has got to be, again, one of the places that you're looking at. Guys, you guys were involved in it. I'll take you first, Guerry, your thoughts on how the city performed.
Just look at the rave reviews, like you mentioned, that it got from media all across the country about this. Some people saying it should be every 3 years that New Orleans should host the Super Bowl. You just don't. It doesn't get better than New Orleans for an event like that. And the city's actually has gotten a lot better in terms of where stuff is convenient for people to go out. Everything else, it was a tremendous. It really was.
It really was. Glenn, again, you were covering it as well. Your thoughts?
Well, I remember the last time in 2013 there was a lot of angst over if they were going to get everything done. New Orleans is really good at putting things off and finishing just in time, like we were in college, cramming for the final exam. But
exactly.
They're really good at it. They know how to do that. But yeah, and media aren't always the nicest with their criticism. So when you're hearing from media consistently how good the city was for the Super Bowl, that's what I found and heard just on social media and interviews and stuff. They were just really blown away by how walkable the city is. Because being at that Super Bowl that the Saints went to in Miami, it's all over the place. You feel like you're in Baton Rouge covering something in New Orleans in Miami.
Literally.
But, and I think people are starting to learn that over and over. And I think 11 or 12 years is too long. It needs to be in that rotation twice in 10 years or once every 5 years or maybe a little less than that. I think Roger Goodell realizes that.
Yeah, I think they do. And again, look, it's going to be difficult. Again, Nashville's coming online. They pretty much tried to duplicate what we have here in New Orleans, again, with their Broadway, their entertainment district, right again off the stadium. You look at Las Vegas, they're going to be in the mix as well. Once every 7 years now is probably what New Orleans can hope for. I mean, that's the best possibility. And again, that is if there are not new stadiums coming online, that again, they've got to give those cities an opportunity to be able to host the game. But I think we've proven once again that nobody does better than New Orleans.
Yeah, and really Clay Travis, my old boss, who's got big Tennessee roots and loves Nashville, but he said, hey, New Orleans is what Nashville aspires to be as a Super Bowl city. And that anything he tweets explodes. So that was a big one.
And let's face it, there was no debacle this time. The reason it took 12 years to get back probably is because the power went out. The last time I was covering that game, there was nothing. I mean, that was a fluke. That people tried to blame it on a New Orleans type thing, but that was a fluke. And it
was energy.
Nothing like that. Yeah, nothing like that happened this time. So.
Yep. And look, look again. I don't think anybody should be surprised on how well we did. because that's what we do. Again, the last minute rush to try to get these projects done was a little bit nerve-wracking, okay? Again, especially if you're worried about the international media coming into this city and critics being very critical of us. And then, of course, coming off again the terrorist attack. You know, there was a little bit of nerves there. The city was locked down in terms of security. We will see that again for Mardi Gras as well. So, again, all is well. And look, big feather in the cap for Michael Heck and all those who were involved in, again, putting this thing on.
And great job by the state police, the New Orleans police. They got help from around the state.
Yes.
And maybe you won't have all the resources week in and week out as you did for the Super Bowl, but let's try to be that good week in and week out with what you do have.
Exactly. And especially, again, for the Sugar Bowl and the college football playoff means a lot to this city. And that's my frustration with, again, not being ready and with the terrorist attack was, again, hey, man, you're getting ready for the Super Bowl. Right. You knew the last quarter of 2024 were going to be a tremendous amount of events, from Taylor Swift all the way again to a college football playoff. We should have been ready.
Yeah, and there's plenty of opportunities for practice for the city being ready, like during Jazz Fest, you know, make sure that goes smoothly. And then during those weekends where there's nothing going on, you know, that's a good time to practice too. So don't just wait till the last quarter.
Yeah, and that's what happened. But again, like a lot of us did with Test, right? I don't know about you, Gary, but I was that guy. Last minutes, you know, cramming. Yeah. New Orleans crammed, but again, New Orleans passed the test for sure. All right, let's see if Kellen Moore can pass the test. He met the media today. Glenn, you were there. Your impressions?
Well, they had us in the defensive team meeting room, which I'd never been in. Okay. It wasn't in the usual press conference place, and it was different than when Sean was in there. They were in the indoor facility, if you remember. Yes. But no, it was impressive. You know, as you know, most of those things are. He did seem a little nervous, like I remember Dennis Allen being, and he really didn't answer questions. He kind of talked around them and you know, just kind of said, you know, moving forward or whatever. But he did say he's going to call plays, and I thought he said Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback. I mean, he was. Do you view it as that? And he said, yes, I do. Now, for how long after this season? But from what I got, I think he's going to be the quarterback this season. But you know, who knows? That could all change. Sure. Because of how much he's gonna cost. But I would ask, who are you going to get without him in the short term? And I think they got too many issues to solve before that one. Yes. But I thought he was impressive, and I like his resume. He is only 36, and he was a quarterback in the NFL briefly. He hasn't worked for the same people. Like he said that a few times. You know, expand your horizons, work for more people. Son of a high school coach. So he's, you know, he's good head coach fodder, but let's see how he goes. We don't know yet.
He checks two huge boxes that everybody wanted, which was one, no connection to the Saints before. Fans would have gone apoplectic, and two, he's an offensive mind, which that's how you do it when you have a defensive coach before you go back. And obviously Sean Payton, you know, his credentials are more impressive than Sean Payton's were when he got the job. I mean, this guy. Two out of his 4 years with the Cowboys, they led the league in offense when he was offensive coordinator. He goes to Philadelphia this year, totally changes his philosophy, makes it a run-based offense, because when you have Saquon Barkley and that works, so he's flexible. You know, when Sean Payton was hired, he had been in his previous offensive coordinator job. He'd had his play calling duty taken away from him by Jim Fossil. Look, I was in Florida at the time as a sports writer. I was born the same year the Saints were born. Grew up in New Orleans, so I was following. I remember thinking it was a questionable hire at the time, but I wasn't in the interview process. Obviously, Sean Payton in a room was incredibly impressive, and all of that worked out. And that's what we have to find out with Kellen Moore. He's never been a head coach. He's certainly the anti-Sean Payton in his personality. Will he be able to command a room the same way Sean Payton was?
Payton looked like showed more ability to command a room though when he got hired. Plus, he had turned down the Raiders. Sean Payton had, and he was up for the Packer job that he didn't quite get to Mike McCarthy. Now, Kellen has been up for some jobs, but he hasn't turned down a head coaching job. In fact, I don't think he's really gotten close to a head coaching job other than this one. He has been on some interviews, and that got him better. He was talking about that. But yeah, he does have some impressive credentials with what he's done on the field as a play caller, for sure. Versatile.
And I agree with both you guys. Again, he is maybe the antithesis of Sean Payton, okay? And I think that is by design. Again, Sean Payton came in, and again, by the end of the first year, after going to the NFC Championship, he had pretty much commanded not just, again, his locker room, but that entire organization, and reshaped that the way his vision was.
Right.
Loomis has been kind of, again, I don't want to say along for the ride, but again, they talked about collaboration again. We've heard a lot about whether it was Saints, and maybe there is some collaboration, but we knew the buck stopped with Sean Payton once he had gotten to the NFC Championship game. It'll be interesting to see, 36 years old, first-time head coach, how much power he will have within the organization, especially when it comes to personnel.
Right.
Okay. He was non-committal on his staff today, saying he was doing a thorough search. When most people believe that that the defensive coordinator will be Brendan Staley, that it will be maybe Duck Nussmeier as maybe the offensive coordinator, maybe his brother again, who was at Missouri as an offensive coordinator. We'll see again how that shakes out. But again, to your guys' point, I don't think he came in and commanded the room. Yeah. When a coach comes in, you want to see if they win the press conference. I'm not going to say he didn't win the press conference. It's just, again, he's not a guy that I think that when he walks in is going to be charismatic and going to just take everybody going to go, whoa, this guy just blew me away.
Yeah, it's going to be just the opposite.
Right.
He looks kind of like an IT guy.
Right.
He looks like an assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be up to him to get the players in the room to believe that. But he's done it before as a coordinator. But I think what's going to be key is because I think Dennis Allen made some mistakes on players, let some players go that shouldn't have gone, and Mickey let it happen too. Sean was always much better at picking players and who to keep than Mickey or anybody else with the Saints for that matter, with only a few mistakes. So Kellen did mention Jeff Ireland today. So it's going to be interesting to see who's making the last call.
Yeah, I don't want to make this dump on Dennis Allen segment, but it's unbelievable the personnel decisions that this defensive coach made. Look, that Kellen Moore starts off ahead of him because he's not Dennis Allen, and it's almost Zach Bond never got a chance to play, goes to Philadelphia, 151 tackles. Right. Trey Hendrickson has a spectacular year. These are guys the Saints drafted, by the way. It's not guys he's coached.
And who was the defensive back he let go that was such a personality?
C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Three guys that were just unbelievable mistakes, and that's in his area of expertise. I mean, Trey Hendrickson, they were like, well, that was a fluke year. Trey Hendrickson, he hadn't done it before, and all Trey Hendrickson's done is lead the NFL in sacks.
Double-digit sacks every year.
And Mickey let that happen.
And Mickey was part of it, too. That's the incompetence, and I mean that word, incompetence, as a head coach. And Dennis Allen didn't command the room either.
That's right.
And so he's starting off ahead of that, and it's one reason. Look, the Saints have all kinds of issues, the salary cap, the roster, but I do think they're not as bad as they looked this year. I actually agree with him about Derek Carr, because the Saints won exactly 0 games this year when Derek Carr wasn't healthy. I think you have to keep him for this year, or it's going to be a debacle next season. Yeah. And then you move on down the road. But I don't think they're as bad as they were, and they were hit with a ton of injuries. They were going to be about like they were the 2 previous years until the injuries.
I think the fans are crazy with their opinion of Derek Carr, because the Derek Carr's 2 seasons with New Orleans, it was a bad team with a bad coach and a bad GM.
Right.
So it's not his fault. Yeah. Well, he didn't play bad.
Right.
He didn't play
the
bad.
one thing he needs is a pocket to be effective. And again, to me, and I know a lot of people look at it, okay, you got to find a quarterback. Quarterbacks are hard to find. And the last thing you want to be is a franchise that chases quarterbacks. I mean, again, New Orleans got so lucky with the divine intervention of Drew Brees coming in again with an arm that he couldn't even throw in training camp
or in preseason.
Right, and ends up being again a first ballot Hall of Famer. Should be a first ballot Hall of Famer next year. You don't want to be the franchise that chases quarterbacks, okay? So again, but what you need to do now is you need to look at again where your team is really deficient, and that is the offense and defensive lines. If there is a direction this team needs to go, and if Kellen Moore is truly going to be successful, they've got to beef those lines up. If they don't, it'll be the same thing, same scenario year after year after year until they get it right.
Yeah, get your defense better, get a younger running back, get your offensive line better, and then when Carr's contract runs out, get a better quarterback.
By next year, it'll be a little easier to let him go because of the salary cap implications. What the question is going to be, and again, I'd like guys to comment on this, it's an either or, in my opinion. It's, again, you keep Demario Davis, you keep Cam Jordan, you keep Tyrann Mathieu and their cap hits, or again, you keep Derek Carr. It's going to be one or the other.
Or a combination.
Maybe there'll be a restructure of some of these guys to help. But again, any restructure kicks the can down the road, and it makes it a lot more difficult to get out of salary cap hell, which they've been in now for been close to maybe a decade. But if they don't, they could possibly be out. Next year will be a little easier on the cap. The following year, they're out. Okay, and so it'll be interesting to see again what direction they go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a salary cap guy. I understand the horrible situation they're in, but personally, if there was a way to keep Demario Davis, I would, because I think he's still an effective
of those
player
three. He's the one to keep.
He's the one to keep. The other two,
I mean, not counting Derek.
Cam Jordan, he had a couple of good games at the end of the year, but he was poor for most of the year.
And Tyrann, man, as great as he was.
And Tyrann Mathieu, he's over the hill.
Yeah.
And
Tyrann Mathieu even said that, right? He said he's not playing like he was.
If you can find a way to keep Demario Davis, if you can make it work, I think you need to do that.
And I love the Honey Badger, but yeah, you could just tell.
The other part of it, from a Kellen Moore standpoint, is what you like is, again, as you guys mentioned, multiple stops, offensive coordinator, being able to, again, morph his system into the type of players that he has, and also, again, being a college quarterback that was very successful. And to me, I don't think it is a bad thing to be a backup quarterback in the NFL. Because again, you're there, you're listening, you're involved in the offense. You're having to chart the plays, etc. And I think if you truly want to be a coach in the NFL on the offensive side, if you're a quarterback, it's not a bad thing to have that headset.
Oh, no question.
And be part of that. It kind of prepares you for again the NFL game. Now again, there's no question he's an off. I don't know if I want to say the name genius again, but again, offensively he's very proficient. The question has always been and will be, and one of the reasons why he's not been a head coach at this point is he head coaching material? Can he command the room? Can he command the organization? Can he move this organization again from what it once was, again in terms of winning organization, to what they've done in the last 4 years, to now again maybe try to get out of this and become, again, what all franchises should aspire to be, and when you're on the professional level, win championships.
Yeah, the fear is he's a film nerd who doesn't relate to people and can just call plays, and now he's going to call plays. And even Sean Payton eventually he got away from calling plays briefly. Then he went back into it. So that's the downside. You hope he sees the big picture and is not just worrying about the plays he calls. He's got to coach the whole team, and with the Saints, he's also got to run the franchise.
Right.
So there's some growing into that he's got to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to be determined, because I don't think there's hardly any players on the roster right now that are going to determine whether Kellen Moore is a successful coach down the road.
Yeah.
It's going to be what happens when they make this transition, when they get out of the salary cap hell in a couple of years. But I totally agree with Glenn. There's no way to know whether he's going to be able to command a room. We just cannot. There's no way. Some guys can do it. Some guys that are introspective and have that personality can. More, I would say, probably can't. But then that's really the ratio in general with offensive and defensive coordinators. Once they get their first head coach, more of them fail than succeed. No matter how successful, no matter how successful they are in numbers. And obviously, the Saints were not an attractive job. We saw that in the process. It's not going to be easy for them.
And the amazing thing about Sean Payton, he had no personnel acquisition experience before he became that. He just kind of became that. So Kellen Moore has no personnel acquisition experience either. So he's got to become that too. And because I don't know if there's a lot of good role models in that area with the Saints right now.
Agreed. I will say this: there is a challenge, and again, I went through this on a radio show yesterday. There is a need at every, some teams you come in and you say, man, we're really solid at this position. There is a need at every position on this roster. And again, that's not hyperbole. Literally, you break down the roster, you look at how many what free agents they have. Offensive linemen right now. Again, they have 2 backup offensive linemen, Saldivari and Hergel. That's it on the team. You look at the safety position. Every single position they need help. So they need upgrades. So this is not a situation where you say, when you go into the draft, well, we're going to talk. No, you need help at every position. So the best player available is going to be maybe what they should be looking for.
Yeah, I think the only position that's okay is quarterback. That's where they don't need to make a move this year, right away. And I would say running back, because Kamara had a great year.
Yeah.
But
there's nothing behind him.
He's 30.
And he's right. Again, Miller's often injured. Williams has been a bust. I mean, again, you want to go quarterback. You look at again. Is Hainer an NFL backup? What's the situation with Rattler? Can he play in the end? Can he be a starter? Can he be a backup? Is there going to be a move this year to have a seasoned backup, somebody who that has actually played in the NFL at a high level? I mean, we go through every single position, as I did yesterday on the program, and I'm telling you, there is a need there. So again, Kellen Moore, and look, the Saints had when you look at Sean Payton when he came in, right? Again, he flipped that roster over, but again, he was also able to get the most out of those guys that were left over from the Haslett era.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it was almost like, I don't think he was under a lot of pressure coming in, because they almost lost the team, because of Tom Benson and trying to move the team. So and then just all of a sudden they got Breeze, and then they kind of fell into Reggie Bush too. So it's not quite the same situation, but from what happened on the field, they are. Kellen is also following a disaster. Sean followed a natural disaster, and the field was pretty bad too that last season. So that's similar.
Yeah, and I mean people thought they were going to be about the worst team in the NFL that year.
Exactly.
Again, I was from a distance in Florida. I mean, I thought they were going to go like 2-14 that year.
Especially after what happened again, no doubt.
When he came in, so it's not. I mean, but it is, like you said, it's different because Kellen Moore's not going to get a Drew Brees.
Exactly, that's the difference.
That roster actually wasn't very good.
Yeah.
And they started off hot. They lost to basically every good team they played in the second half of that year pretty decisively, and then they were able to beat Philadelphia. Somehow with a 10-6 record, they were able to get a number 2 seed and they were able to beat Philadelphia. But Sean Payton, they made the most out of that roster, and then we saw the next couple of years they dropped off, and he had to get his own roster in to get to where they really could be a championship team.
All right, last question before we go to break, and then we move on. How, for the sake of the organization, I think the leash will be long. Again, you can't hire a guy like this at 36 and not have some real patience with him. I do think the organization will be patient. I wonder how much the fan base will be patient. Guys?
Yeah. Well, Dennis Allen had kind of a short leash because he inherited a better team, and he was right after Peyton, and the team was there was still high hopes for that team when he came in. That's not the case now, and I think the fans see that. I mean, I think they'll be more patient with Kellen than they were with Dennis, because they know the roster. They saw what happened. So I think they'll be more patient, but how long that'll last, I don't know.
I'd say yes and no, because although I totally agree with Glenn that Derek Carr should be the starting quarterback, we know the fans have no patience with him. So he could go out and throw 3 touchdowns, and if he throws an interception in the fourth quarter, he's a bum, and people will be upset. I don't know. I think people as long as Mickey Loomis is around, I think people, they see continuity there, and they're sick of him.
Right.
And I'm not sure there is going to be a whole lot of patience in the fan base. I think it's going to be, if they have a tough year next year, I'll be really interested to see what the reaction is.
And I do think the ire of the fan base, unless Moore is really a disaster, where you see this guy just can't get it done. Right. I think if there is not incremental. You see the opportunity for this team incrementally get better year to year. The ire of the fan base will be at Mickey Loomis, and again, because that he was he's the reason why you see where this team is now, where it is, the decisions that he made. So I think at some point again, it'll become front and center with Mickey. Now again, if Kellen Moore comes in and does an incredible job, then Mickey Loomis can actually say, hey man, Sean Payton was not a fluke. I've done it 2 times in a row. That's my legacy, and I think this is a legacy hire for Mickey Loomis. He's got to prove that Sean Payton wasn't a fluke, and that again, he has the ability to be able to go out there and get young head coaches and that turn them into Super Bowl champions.
He has to prove he can win when he doesn't luck into getting one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the
Amen.
NFL,
Amen to
when
that.
nobody else wanted him. So yeah,
no doubt. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Glenn Guilbeau, Guerry Smith are our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll hear from our underwriters. We'll come right back. We're going to start off with Tulane. Exciting news about the practice facility coming up. We'll talk about that and so much more. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Glenn Guilbeau, Guerry Smith, our guest on the panel this evening. All right. It's been a long time coming. I don't know how many shows you and I have sat down and discussed this. We thought it would be done by the Super Bowl because that was the plan, right? Thankfully, we had incredible weather last week, and the Kansas City Chiefs did not have to go get away from the rain. But Tulane has decided to build a practice facility. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, I think the most excited person about it of all is Tulane Athletic Director David Harris.
I was going to say me, but okay.
When he arrived, he says that's absolutely by far the number one question he's gotten from fans from the day he started his job in January last year was, when are you going to do this? And he inherited a bad plan. There's no other way to put it. The original plan was they were going to put the facility near the in a little area near the Riley Center that just, one, the students didn't like it, and two, it just wasn't big enough. It was not going to be good, and they ended up nixing that plan and kind of starting over the process, and they got, there's no great alternative at Tulane because there's just not enough space, available space, but they're going to do it in the best possible place they could have, which is the Claiborne parking lot right on the other side of the baseball stadium from the football stadium. It's not ideal in that it's not 100-yard, it's not a full-size football field. It's going to be, they're estimating it's going to be 60 to 70 yards. It's going to be the appropriate width of a football field. It's going to have a bubble on top, a covering that's about 60 feet high, which means you can't do any punting or anything like that. I don't think the field's going to be big enough. If they're using it in season, they're not going to be able to do two separate scout teams. They're going to have to alternate and stuff like that. But it beats what they had, which was nothing. Right. The Saints have been incredibly generous in letting Tulane use their indoor practice facility on days when it rained, but that's a logistical nightmare when you have classes to bus your players there and bus them back. It was inconvenient. They needed to get this done, and they're going to get it done. And the timeline, they're hoping to have it done before the start, not by the beginning of preseason practice in August, but before the season opener at the end of August. So it's a pretty aggressive timeline. But yeah, a long time coming. It's another example of their renewed commitment. Because 5-10 years ago, heck, maybe 2 years ago, they would have thrown up their hands. Well, we just can't get this done. You can use the Saints. Why do you need a practice facility? They would have done that, and they now have a real internal administrative commitment to do the best that they can.
Willie Fritz might still be here if they had that facility. Okay. We talked about it on the show. Like I said, Tulane has an incredible architecture school, engineering school. Somebody over there could figure out how to do this on that small footprint, and of course using that Claiborne lot. So what are they going to do now? Is it going to be a facility and parking, or just facility alone?
The people that were floating that it was going to be also parking were incorrect. That was, and I asked that was never in their plans.
Where do people park now?
Somewhere. They didn't have a total answer for that. And of course, at the meeting I went to, that was several questions, but they're going to move some people to the Guilbeau garage. They're going to try to, sometimes that fills up with students. They're going to they're going to change what student parking is to allow more spaces there. Some people will be in Loyola parking garage, which isn't ideal because for older people, it's a hefty walk to the stadium, and they're coming up with other plans. But they said there's 300 parking spots in the Claiborne lot, and some of them, there'll still be some spots where the facility is, and they were claiming it would be less than 100, the difference once they move people around, and it's kind of an ongoing process as to I know I'm affected because I go to every baseball game, and that's going to be gone for me. Now, but in general, it's not going to, I don't think that parking situation is going to turn out to be a huge deal.
According to your article, all division, all sports will be able to utilize that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's sort of administrative speak, trying to please everybody. I mean, what's the swim program going to do? I mean, it's for football. They're going to it's going to be available. The other disadvantage in it, again, there's nothing they could do about it, is you'd like to have it connected to where the football is and the baseball stadium's in between. So if it's raining hard, they've got to traipse over to that, and there's no indoor path to get there. But again, unless they move the baseball stadium, there's no other option there.
Here's the big one: neighborhood. What was their reaction to this?
It was compared to when I went to all the Yeoman Stadium meetings, and boy, it was hostile. a lot of neighborhood for that. This time it wasn't like. I mean, there were people with some concerns. People worried that with fewer parking, that people were going to go park in their neighborhoods that hadn't done that before. But overall, I think it's a small facility. It's not going to. The footprint isn't going to really change a whole lot.
I wonder if they could build a parking lot away, or use a parking lot away, and have some kind of an Uber lot.
Yeah, well, they mentioned they do have a downtown parking lot option with that.
Okay, so they would bus people back?
Yeah, where they would bus people back.
Yeah.
We'll see on that front, but it's not that many people being affected by this.
Is there a football ops building that's going to be involved in that, or are they using
not
the
in
Raleigh
this?
Center?
This is just what?
In other words, LSU has a football ops building, right? And they have the practice facility. Of course, you can't compare.
They have not done that yet. I mean, that's in the hopper down the road, but this doesn't have any.
They just got so much more.
They're not doing football ops. This doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just it's a practice facility, mainly for football.
Glenn, I want to bring you in on the conversation again. Lifelong New Orleanian, again, was down at Tulane Stadium like I was as a kid, walking to the stadium, parking. Again, I lived uptown, so we walked. You parked. Talk about this for Tulane. Would you think this can help them in terms of, again, just in the American Athletic Conference, we've seen, again, other programs put money into facilities. Okay, we know NIL and transfer portal are huge right now. NIL and NIL opportunities are huge for kids. But how much do you think this means for Tulane in terms of recruiting and getting this practice facility built?
Well, so they still will practice in their stadium, right?
It's just going to be.
This is for hot weather, when indoors
and mainly
and rain.
Because the 8-mile radius thing catches them several times.
Right. Well, that was a necessary facility for sure. If that's what the athletic director said, because for the most part at the schools that have more space, like the land grant institutions that aren't urban, the facilities arms race is really kind of over. I mean, because they were doing stuff that they didn't really need. I never forget several years ago, pre-NIL, LSU made a big deal about these sleeping pods they had for their players, so they could take a nap and never have to mix with the other students. Lo and behold, they don't want to mix with the other students, or walk to any other area of campus. But now that's nothing, because the players now, they just want the cash and the money. They're not that concerned with how good the weight room is. Oh, Auburn's got a better weight room, I'm going there. Well, no, you get more NIL money. So, but Tulane's in a tough situation, because if you want fans going to your games, man, parking is so huge. So I don't know what they're going to do there. But Tulane has been really good since NIL and the portal started. It's really turned
The
their
feel that we're
program
collecting,
around.
and Gary can talk about it.
Right. I did. I talked to John Sumrall was not at the, and I've had people say, why wasn't he at that? Because you don't need a coach being in an event where people are asking about parking issues. That's not his parameter. There was no reason at all for him to be there. But he's on board with this. But he will say, just to Glenn's point, for recruiting, it's not as big a deal as it used to be. It's all about how much are you paying guys.
Yes.
It's that simple, and how much is your collective doing. And Tulane has their Fear the Wave collective has just done a tremendous job. And that's another area where if this whole thing had come into being 10 years ago, Tulane would be dead as a football program, because they would have been behind the curve. They would have had administration that was opposed to doing anything, and they were ahead of the curve on this one.
Are there any buildings around Tulane or on the Tulane campus that need to be
Demolished?
Demolished. They've done that at LSU. They needed to be demolished.
Yeah. There's none. That's not going to happen. Let's put it this way.
Right.
They're pretty much.
They're landlocked.
And they're in a tough situation because it's a beautiful part of the city.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful neighborhood by the city, so I can understand the neighbors.
And the mock-up of this, it looks nice. It's funny. One neighbor's like, it's white and those things get dirty fast. What are your plans to clean it?
We're going to call people clean the dome.
But it's going to have landscaping. It'll look. It's going to look nice for whatever that's.
It's a big step for Tulane. It's a needed step for Tulane. Again, look, there's no guarantee you're going to keep John Sumrall. He's going to want to be one of the young hot coaches. But again, this really helps Tulane going forward, in my opinion. Again, I agree with Glenn. I agree with Gary. It's all about the money now, NIL. But again, you still need, it's very difficult for a program to have, when it starts to rain, to have to bus people to Metairie just to be able to practice. Okay,
the facilities now are more for the coaches.
Right.
It's quite the drive to the Saints facility.
Put everybody on buses.
If the Superdome were available all the time, that would be a little easier because it's closer. But the Superdome is rarely available. They have practice there some too, but the Saints are really great about letting them come in a short notice. It's hard to get to the Superdome with a short notice.
I want to spend just a little time on basketball. First of all, UNO again is really having a tough season. 4-21, 2-12. They got McNeese on Saturday. The LSU women are really playing well right now. They're 25-1. They're 10-1. They're 5th in the nation. They got Texas on Saturday in Austin. But again, South Carolina just lost to Texas, and the LSU's in a first place tie for the Southeastern Conference lead. LSU men, a tough season for them. They're 12-12. They're really starting off pretty well in the non-conference schedule. They're 1-10 in the SEC, and of course Tulane 13-11, 7-4. They got Rice on Saturday. Glenn, I'll take you first. Talk about LSU women and men's basketball, if you would.
Well, Kim Mulkey has been getting criticized for her non-conference schedule, which she doesn't believe in a non-conference schedule, and you can't argue with her record, but she's looking like a number 1 seed if she can win at Texas, because she's only got 1 loss, and people forget it's not all about who you beat, and we learned this during the college football playoff. It's it's who you don't lose to. And sometimes that's really big, and she hasn't had a bad loss, so if she can get a win against Texas, she just beat number 14 Tennessee, she'll be in line for that a top 4 seed with only 1 loss. And as usual with Kim Mulkey, her teams get better and better as the season goes on. She's brilliant at that. And the men, they missed a golden opportunity to beat a good Ole Miss team on Saturday. That was terrible how they let that 70-59 lead go in 3 minutes. I was at the Dwight Yoakam concert watching it on my phone, and I just could not believe it. But and they got a couple teams they can beat now, though. They play Oklahoma Saturday, and then they play 0-10 South Carolina at home, so they have a chance to win a couple of games. But I think Matt McMahon is still going to be around because basketball is just not a priority at the moment at LSU.
Yeah, and they show that with their NIL, right? In terms of how they're divvying up the money right now. Talk about Tulane and looks like a pretty good team, man.
Yeah, this was a team that was picked by the coaches to finish tied for second to last in the league. It's a team that has 1 player on the roster who'd ever played any significant amount in his college career at this level, which is their point guard Rowan Brumbaugh, who as a freshman at Georgetown last year started. They've overachieved in terms of what outside expectations were. And last week they pulled a reverse LSU. They were down 9 with 2 minutes and 5 seconds left to UTSA and scored the last 10 points after playing horribly for 38 minutes.
I sent Guerry a text after the first half going, Tulane left their game at home.
Right. And that was key because the goal now is you want to be a top 4 seed. It's not a one-bid league because Memphis is, it'll be a one-bid league if Memphis wins the conference tournament. They're going to the NCAA tournament regardless.
Yes.
And if another team wins the conference tournament, it's 2. Tulane is right now tied for 4th. And if you're a top 4 seed in that league, you get a double bye to the quarterfinals. You're 2 games away from playing in the championship game. That's the goal now. The concern is they've got so many guys who are playing so much more minutes than they've ever played in their career. They did not play particularly well last week. Their leading scorer, Caleb Banks, who was averaging about 18 points a game his last 3 games, 4 points, 6 points, 2 points. Yeah. He had been in Indiana the previous 2 years, but played like 5 minutes a game. Their schedule is ridiculously easy the rest of the way. It's not a good league. It's the American Athletic Conference is down this year. Their next 6 games out of 7 are against teams that have losing records in the conference. So if they haven't hit a wall, if their guys aren't tired, they really should be able to get a top 4 seed and getting that. And then you take your shot in the conference tournament.
Stacey Holland was a really good coach. UNO's having a really tough year. UNO's really going to, again, it's very difficult. I know they have a collective, the NIL part of it. Again, look, the UNO Lakefront Arena is still a beautiful facility. Yeah. I don't want to question whether they are committed to athletics, but it's becoming very, very difficult now with things that are going on at that university.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for him right now, and if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. Because they just lost a game last week. First of all, they've suspended 4 of their players. They've got, which I don't directly cover UNO anymore, so I haven't done any investigative reporting on it. But they've not. There's been no explanation for it, and they've been gone for. They're down to 7 players on their roster that play, but. They finally put themselves in a position to maybe win a game a week ago, and then a team hit a 55-foot shot at the buzzer right after UNO had tied it to win. That the school, they have to make a decision on I mean, their resources are pretty much nil right now.
It is.
He's an excellent coach, but I don't know if he quite knew what type of situation he was getting into when he got there. Now, his first year was tough because he came in late, and we'll see what he can do next year, but it's tough on him, and he's won everywhere he's been as a head coach, so it's been hard for him this year.
I think that their UNO situation, I mean, that's why Blake Dean just up and left.
Yeah,
right.
You know,
he sees their handwriting on the
with
wall.
a pretty good team this year. He's. You want to talk about an underrated coach. He did an unbelievable job there. He never got to the NCAA tournament. They got to the championship game in the conference tournament one time, but they were knocking on the door. Obviously a one-bid league where you have to win the conference tournament to get in. But he had them in the top third of the league almost every year he was there. Tremendous job. And you're right, for him to, they have a lot of guys coming back. They had the conference player of the year 2 years ago had transferred to Houston. He came back this year after having an injury-plagued year at Houston. They had a real chance this year, and Blake Dean still decided he didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, he had an opportunity. He was going to make him more money for his family, and I'm sure, again, he looked. Look, the guy has coached a team without a locker room. I mean, we should still, again.
Talking about an indoor football facility.
Without a locker room. Without a locker room.
Right.
And again, that tells you where UNO Athletics is right now. Well, I hope I have some time to come back to baseball, because I'd like to get you guys take on again the baseball season, which is getting ready to start right now. But I have to talk about the Pelicans, and of course, Brandon Ingram traded to the Toronto Raptors for Bruce Brown Jr., who has an expiring contract, $23 million. Kelly Olynyk, 2 years left on his deal, $12.8 million this season, $13.4 next year. Indiana's again lottery 1 through 4 lottery protected pick. In 2026, that's a first-round pick, and then the 2031 pick from Toronto, that's a second-round pick. All right. Yesterday, David Griffin said both Olynyk and Brown are part of their long-term plan, so this is not a situation where they brought 2 guys in and they're getting rid of them. Brandon Ingram ends up signing a 3-year, $120 million deal with Toronto, about $40 million a year, which is about what we thought he would get, right? About $40 million a year. He was looking for 52. He was going to get about 40. The third year of that deal is a player option. So again, much like what we talked about, we've talked about this on this show and the radio show. 2 years to prove yourself, an expiring contract again, or a player option to get out if you need to in the third year to get back into free agency. So The Pelicans couldn't make it work because, again, they paid Trey Murphy, and again, they are tied to Zion Williamson. David Griffin pretty much yesterday just kind of glazed over the fact that this has been a debacle of a season, okay, and just kind of looked forward to next year on, again, how they're going to try to rebuild this team. They're right now in the top 3 in terms of the lottery to see if they could possibly get the first overall pick. But again, at this point, again, the season looks like, again, it is pretty much over with, again, the All-Star break on starting this weekend, and the Pels, again, winning only 12 games this season. First of all, guys, do you think Willie Green is going to withstand this season and will be back next year?
I mean, I don't know how he can. I mean, we're talking about, look, they've had a ton of injuries.
Right.
We understand they've been just devastated by injuries, but they're 12-42. But it's not just that, it's the effort level. Some days they play hard, some days, and that's sometimes when they have they've never had most of their guys, but when they've had enough guys to compete, they lose by 40 some nights, and that goes to coaching. I mean,
Right.
what else does that go to? It doesn't seem like internally there's been a lot of talk about that, but I just don't. When your team is 12-42 and almost leads the league in blowout losses, I don't know how it's tenable for you to be back the next year.
The loss of Herb Jones really hurt this team, but also the loss of Najee Marshall, the loss of Dyson Daniel, and also Larry Nance. It really gutted the defense on this team. And you see, this is a different team than they've been the last few years, where, again, they've been one of the top defensive teams in the NBA. They are far from that now. They got guys scoring 30 points a game. Sometimes you can have Zion, CJ, and also Trey, hitting again, mid-20s, 30 points a game, and still losing.
It's not a good.
No, it's just not.
And they should have gotten rid of. They should have traded Brandon Ingram last year. They would have got. Look, they got something for him, which if they hadn't done anything, they weren't getting anything. But are Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk going to be solutions to anything? Probably not. So they really didn't get much for him.
Herb Jones out for the season, and again had successful surgery, as did DeJounte as well, with his torn Achilles. Murray again out for the season, again supposedly successful surgery there. David Griffin did mention championships yesterday, which again, that's the first person I've heard since Sean Payton out on Airline Drive mention championships. The question is, again, how much rope he will have. It certainly appeared yesterday during his press conference that he feels he's safe to at least for another season.
Yeah. They've made some good decisions, and Trey Murphy was a terrific pickup. He's become it just kills me. I look at their roster, and I look at the individuals on their roster, and when they're healthy, and you think that could be a good team, it just hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't happened.
And we know Zion's always going to be injured. You can't. It doesn't. I saw Willie Green had another quote the other day about how awesome he's been when he's healthy.
Right.
But that's the problem. He's not healthy. It's not like he's a good team leader. It's just you can't build around a guy like that. And it's not even all his fault. His body, his athleticism and his body scream injury waiting to happen. And they're going to have. It's such a shame because they've got a lot of parts that should work when they're healthy, but they never have.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, one of the things that also David Griffin talked about yesterday, something we talked a lot about. Again, you cannot have two stars that again are often injured. Play 34% of their games together since they've been on the same team. So we'll see again how this goes. Let's talk some baseball though. I'm coming to you first. We only got about 6 minutes left, so let's make it brief. Thoughts on LSU? How good they can be this year?
I think they could win the national championship or get close to it. I mean, there's a lot of great transfers. I mean, just about every transfer they got is ranked. Cade Anderson is going to be the Friday night starter. He's a returning pitcher. They got Anthony Ianson from UC San Diego is in the rotation, and then Chase Shores, who was really supposed to be a great pitcher in 2023, had Tommy John. He's going to be back. He's 6'8". They got a 6'9" pitcher named Maverick Rizzi. He's really got more pitchers and more outfielders than he knows what to do with. They need somebody to develop as a second power source after Jared Jones. But it's going to be fun to watch how he mixes and matches his pitchers. He's got a bunch of lefty pitchers, a bunch of lefty hitters. They were a little right-handed, too strong last year. So he's really got everything he needs. It's just going to be a question of how he works it out, mixing and matching. But the key is they have left-handed starting pitching. Connor Ware could be in the rotation. If not, he's a transfer left-hander. He could be the closer. They got a great freshman, William Schmidt from Catholic High in New Orleans. He might be the best midweek starter in the country. So it's going to be really exciting watching them.
Tulane?
Yep. The goal. Look, they've made a regional back-to-back years for the. They did it in 2015, 2016. Hadn't been to a single one since then. And Jay Ullman's been there for 2 years. He's been an unbelievable tournament coach. The next step is to get into a position where you can actually get an at-large bid, which they haven't. I mean, they were terrible 2 years ago, and then they won the tournament. Last year they were pretty good. They got hot at the end of the year, but they were 36 and 26. They were nowhere near an at-large bid. That's their goal. They want to win the league. That's going to be tough. East Carolina is 5-time defending champion in the league, but Tulane, D1Baseball.com picked them second the other day, so Tulane's right there. Can they take that next step where they don't have to rely on getting hot in the conference tournament to get to the postseason? They think they have the roster this year to do it. 8 of their top 10 pitchers returning. You don't see that very often in college. In college baseball. They've got a very good Friday starter, Luke Vlada, who shut out Nichols over 8 innings in their regional win last year. So they've got parts. I don't know. They've done that. The schedule's really. They're going to have to win a ton of games to get an at-large bid because the schedule's weak. They're not playing. They've got one home game all year against a team that made an NCAA regional last year, and that's Nichols. So that doesn't help your RPI if you better win a lot of games, and they feel like they have a chance to do that this year.
How good can UNO be this year? Especially losing Dean.
Yeah, it depends on how much that affects them. I mean, they've got a good roster. Again, the Southland Conference Player of the Year from 2 years ago is back on their roster this year. They returned a fair amount. And the other thing is Nichols was their Mike Silva was an unbelievable baseball coach. He won. Basically, as long as he stayed at Nichols, they were probably going to win the league every year. He left for Arkansas State. So, yeah, they have a shot. They'll probably be one of the top 5 teams in the league. And then in that league, it's all, can you go win the conference tournament?
No doubt. Gary, one more time, why don't you tell folks about your website? Let them know how they can keep up with everything Tulane.
Sure. The website is thewavereport.com, tulane.rivals.com. Anything that happens at Tulane, you'll find it on that website. You'll find it right there.
And of course, again, everybody remember this book. The Skip Burtman story by Glenn Guilbeau. Glenn, where can folks get the book?
It's at the Barnes & Noble on Veterans Highway in Metairie, acadianbooks.com, amazon.com, and it's at the Barnes & Nobles in Baton Rouge, one on the Union, Perkins Row, City Place, and Skip's going to be doing signings in March and April and May this season.
Glenn Guilbeau, again, editor of Tiger Rag, also, again, writes for Fansided for the Saints, and, of course, Gary Smith, again, advocate, NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, and the Wave Report. Guys, thanks so much for being on our panel this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Sounds good. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. As always, we appreciate our audience. Thank you so much for, again, watching our show. Remember, there's so many ways to catch our program now. There's a QR code on your screen that will take you to, again, the WLAE-TV YouTube channel, also to my website. Between WLAE, WLAE-TV 2, Pelican Sports Television, set your DVR. You'll never miss the program. You catch me on the radio, 106.1 The Ticket. That's weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, The Ticket also has their own app, 106.1 The Ticket app. You can download that at your favorite app store. Also, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio app. Again, other ways to catch the show on a digital platform. You can listen live on the Ticket website as well as ericasher.com. I want to thank the underwriters who make this show possible. Each and every one of those underwriters who have been with us. Again, they're the reason why our show continues. Please continue to support the underwriters, and of course, we appreciate those underwriters. They're on your screen as we conclude this show today. Also, again, want to thank WLAE-TV and of course the great folks here that produce our program. They do an excellent job each and every week. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, and the best director on the planet, William Hill. For Glenn Guilbeau and Gary Smith, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.